I've always thought, you know, I could do more with my life. Life can't just mean staying here in Beeston. You know, get married, have a couple of kiddies, have a little shop and that's it. Life has to mean more than this. Before we went to Pakistan, we were all close. Me, Shazad, Sadiq, and Haseeb. We were going to go to Pakistan, learn, and ultimately you fight if you've got the chance. Britain, America, they're the aggressors. We always wanted to go liberate Afghanistan from foreign occupiers. That was the ultimate aim. But the plan changed. I love the brothers, but if I believed that what they did was right, do you actually think that I'd be sat here? On 7th of July, I would have been with the brothers and I would have had a rucksack and I would have killed hundreds of people. You couldn't stop them. You could have definitely not have stopped me.
There have been a series of terrorist attacks in London.
But this is the biggest crime scene in English history.
So far, all the evidence, the coordinated explosions, points to Al-Qaeda.
How did 4 young British men end up becoming suicide bombers in their own country?
What makes a person do such a thing?
It's difficult to really believe what has happened and happened to you. But it happened to you, and you've got to cope with it.
Take me back to, early 2000s. Who were you? What were you doing? What brought you to London?
Well, I'd always worked in London. I've mainly worked in the city most of my life. I was working as an insurance broker with Lloyd's of London. My hopes was to enjoy my life, quite simply. That morning was just a normal start to the day. The only complication was that my girlfriend and I had fallen out a little bit. Whilst I was leaving for work, it was still playing on her mind, and she was a strong character. And just before I closed the front door, she shouted out, "Don't die on the way to work." I like to think I followed her instructions to the letter.
Good morning, and you're watching Sunrise Live on Sky News on Thursday, July the 7th. We're live in Stratford, where London is coming to terms with its status as the host city of the 2012 Olympic Games.
The other big story today, the G8 summit gets underway here at Gleneagles.
We have to go on fighting terrorism as long as it takes. What happened on the 11th of September was, of course, a brutal and horrific attack on America. But it was a demonstration of what these people are capable of in any part of the world.
Before 9/11, Muslims were just a mystery. The only thing people knew about Muslims in the UK was that they don't like Salman Rushdie and something about not eating pork. I mean, that was pretty much it. The feeling is you're tolerated, not accepted. And so I wanted to make things easier, especially for like kids from my background. I was working in a lot of social enterprise, not-for-profit charity sector. And I was asked as a volunteer to be like a government advisor. You know, it's like, what do the youth of today want to do? And so I was on way from Hackney to Westminster. Missed the train, so oh God, I'm going to be late. And 5 minutes later, a train pulls up, and that's never happened before. It's always 15 minutes. Oh my God, I'm so lucky.
Part of the joy I always found of travelling the tube was the variety of people. I just loved watching them and thinking, what is their life? What are they going to do today? What's involved for them?
I had booked the day off and been working extremely hard, being part of the Olympics team, trying to get the Games to London. Lots of people thought London wouldn't win. So I had promised my son, who was 3 years old at the time, I'll spend a day with him. But we won.
Games in 2012 are awarded to the city of London.
The day of the announcement, on the 6th of July, it was pandemonium. Somebody said to me, Thelma, you were jumping so high. It was the biggest achievement in my life to date. On the 7th of July, I decided I had to go into the office and start working.
You're a workaholic.
I think so, yes.
Very good morning. Well, Tony Blair has been meeting George Bush this morning, the first of the bilaterals ahead of a day which will see them concentrating mainly on this divisive issue of climate change.
Obviously, we've discussed the issue of Iraq and Iran, the broader Middle East and so on, the normal range of issues you'd expect.
Usually, like a commuter, you get on your same carriage. And I always used to travel the second carriage. They were all creatures of habit, I guess. So the Circle Line train comes in, and there was a lot of people coming off. And I just changed my mind and walked to the next set of doors at the front of the third carriage. We start out of Liverpool Street Station towards Aldgate. I was only going 2 stops, so I was standing with my hand grabbing the central rail. Fortunately, the carriage, there wasn't many people on this one. And I just stood holding on with one hand. Everything looked normal. The next thing I know, there's just a rushing sound across me. I was enveloped in this orange and yellow cloud, and I remember these silver zigzags across my vision. And your mind starts asking the question, what is this? And I asked that question 3 times with increasing demand and firmness. And then I said to myself, it's a bomb. Just give me a second. It seems so real. But which is fine,
You're reliving it now.
Yeah. Which is fine, which is absolutely fine. I've relived it so many times, so it's absolutely fine. But I may have to catch my breath occasionally. So I said to myself, oh, that's not good. The next thing I knew, everything was dark. I thought I'd died. There was no light, there was nothing. I put my hand to my face and I felt the blood. And I remember staring into the darkness like it was physically painful as staring so hard to just see a sign of life. But there was nothing.
I felt as if I was lifted off the floor and I was going round and round and round in circles. I could hear people screaming, but it all seemed like a distance. All of a sudden, I opened my eyes and I was on the train tracks. Part of the door was on my right thigh. I could see people screaming on the train. And I could see bodies on the train track. I was in and out of consciousness. And there was a man, his hand on my head. And I took his hand off. I held him for a while, but I then put it back down next to him. I thought of my son, and I thought of my mother. And I said, I don't want to die.
I had no intentions to do no bombings. That's all I can say to you. We used to do Arabic classes together in the Islamic bookshop. Brother goes to me, I've got a couple of videos about brothers who are fighting in Chechnya and brothers who are fighting in Bosnia. As soon as I got the cassettes, I went back to my best friend Shazad's house here and gone to his bedroom and we put on the movies in it. We're showing people massacring the Muslims mercilessly and the whole world watched. But the Muslims were fighting back.
The Mujahideen moved from the front line of Diyala Bucha near Travnik to the mountains.
It really brought a sense of brotherhood to a different level. You're getting Muslims from all around the world, Arabs, Pakistanis, Africans going to a foreign land to help their Muslim brothers. I couldn't believe it. I thought, this is beautiful. It gave me a focus in life to help my Muslim brothers. On my bedroom wall, I used to have a lot of hip-hop stars like Tupac and Biggie, and then it all rapidly changed. I took them all down, put Kalashnikovs on my bedroom wall, loads of them. I can remember once, I was watching a movie with Shazad. I go to him, you know, one of these days, brother, I'm just going to go, you know? And then the next day we were coming back from the evening prayer, and Shazad goes to me, you know that thing that we were talking about yesterday, yeah? I spoke with brother Sadiq, and Sadiq's going to Pakistan, and he wants to go to a training camp. Somebody's dropped out, so there's a place that you can take. Sadiq said everything would be sorted, there's no problem.
Yes, Andy.
Hello, Andy. It's Nigel. Is it a technical explosion or is it...
No. A cable, a high voltage cable went in the Liverpool Street area.
Right.
That's what's caused the bang.
Right.
As is usual, when you have a train hit the tunnel, people heard an explosion. It is not an explosion.
Should we go to the morning and sort of describe to me like what your sort of main responsibilities were that day?
On the day, yeah, 7th of July, we were all at King's Cross. That was our allocated station for the day. And we were just monitoring people going through. I'd worked my way around the main railway station. I went down one level. Whilst I was there, there was this almighty, I can only sort of say it was like crump, and the floor shook. I went down onto one platform, looked up the tunnel towards Russell Square. The top third of the tunnel was full of smoke. 2 people came down the track out of the tunnel, and they were covered in sort of like greasy residue. As I asked them, "Where have you come from?" their reply was, "The train. The train blew up." The tunnel lights had come on, so that's an indication that there's no power to the tracks. I went up the tunnel and I go into the train. There's a sense of fear from people. They don't know what to do. Mild sense of panic. We've started to get people off the train. I just worked my way through the train, and I come to a point and I can see that the lights are out. The carriage door, it's a bit bent, and I start to push it as hard as I can. The first thing that I notice as I go into that carriage is the floor is sticky. There's body parts. There's body parts that I can see. I can hear someone asking for help, and it sounds like they're under that train. That's the point where I have to turn around and walk away. My responsibilities as the first officer on scene is to gather as much evidence and information that I can to help the bigger rescue effort. At 9:06, I declared major incident, and it's at that point a senior officer tells me I'm not the only incident. London has been attacked.
Something's gone badly wrong down there. Please set for incidents. Freak, yeah. Code Amber. Code Amber. Code Amber, the whole network. Code Amber, the whole network. We're going to stop the whole network. All right, do it now. No. Code Amber, get them into station. Yeah. And then stand by. Yeah, that's all we're going to do.
breaking news we're getting from the PA Newswire that there's been reports of an explosion outside Liverpool Street Station. That, of course, in the East End of London. Another incident, London Underground are telling us, at Edgware Road, and that, of course, is in northwest London. Now, in response to that breaking news, St Pancras has been evacuated, probably just as a precaution.
Speculation only at the moment of what caused that, but police stressing that it probably was a power failure or a collision between two trains.
We have thick smoke coming from the tunnel. We have customers on the track. Will you please get as many ambulances as you can here?
Right.
We have serious injuries.
I'll come back to you. Hey, we need ambulances and water to Russell, to King's Cross. I understand what you're saying. And Russell Square. We're going to have it as a major incident, so we'll get ambulances to you wherever I can.
I've had desperate shouts from both ends of Aldgate and Edgware Road. They're still desperately waiting for emergency services. The emergency services have declared they're on their way down there.
We were sitting there for ages, waiting to be rescued. People were catatonic. They were just staring into the distance, silent. I was bleeding out. I thought I was going to die any minute. But I just determined that I was going to die above ground. I just wanted to see the light of day again.
The lights in our carriage went out. The carriage in front of us started filling with smoke. Someone opened the carriage door and said, "Please, can you move down, because we can't breathe in here." And then you start hearing the screams. At the time, we assumed that it was claustrophobic folks.
This is a very serious incident happening here. We need your cooperation. We're doing our best. We now need your help.
We were stuck there for about 45 minutes. And then the first responders came, and so they beckoned us all to walk to the back of the train. Every now and again, someone would be screaming, "Move out of the way," so everyone would jump on the seats, and you see someone covered in blood. And that's when it was like, okay, what's happened? It doesn't make, there must have been a fire or something must have, happened. You just don't know.
We stepped down onto the track. I stopped and looked into the second carriage from the distance. There was a very clear crater just a few feet away of where the bomb must have been. I realised if I hadn't changed my mind and got onto the third carriage, I wouldn't be here.
Getting a report from Reuters, what they're describing as a major incident on London Underground. I think people are streaming out of Aldgate Tube Station, covered in blood.
Ladies and gentlemen, move back! Outside the pavement! Enter, move back! People have been coming out, grey faces.
I was lying there and I thought, if there's a disaster, they try to save people who are alive first. And I thought, if I continue lying there, they might think I was dead. I tried to wriggle my way to sort of get up. And I could see that my left foot was twisted backwards. And I kept saying, help me, I'm alive. And then they came towards me, and I was placed on a stretcher. I felt lucky, but then I was thinking of the other people who were lying on the train tracks. In particular, the man whose hand was on my head. I was so focused on helping myself that I didn't help him. And as a Christian, I thought, that was selfishness. I was taken to the Royal London Hospital. and they took me upstairs to a ward. I just blacked out.
As we got off the platform, up the stairs of Aldgate to the entrance, all the police were there. And they're trying to take everyone's details down, like it was a panic. And so they said, so what's your name? And I said, Mustafa. I was like, right, can we search your bag? And then after that, the police said, you can leave. And I just kind of sat down, and I couldn't move. I started shivering again. You're kind of shocked. And then the police called us back from the cordons because they could see that we weren't going anywhere. And said, right, we're taking you to the hospital because there's something wrong. And then they asked me again, so what's your name? I said, Mustafa. Okay, mate. So then they searched my bag again. And I was just like, yeah, just take it. Go, enjoy yourselves. Because, you know, it is what it is.
We were evacuated across the road to Aldgate bus station as the walking wounded. People are trying to take it all in. And has this really happened? The only way I could really see my injuries was to use my phone to take pictures of myself. I remember speaking to my girlfriend on the phone, and she was telling me it wasn't a bomb, it was power surges, because that's what the news was saying. I think I very angrily said, no, it's a bomb.
We flew from Manchester Airport into Islamabad. The same day, we went to Mansehra. That's where the camp is. We were going Kashmir, so eventually if we wanted to fight, we would have gone and fought against the Indian occupation. In Kashmir, the Muslims are getting massacred by the Hindu soldiers.
Pakistan's claim that this predominantly Muslim territory should have been ceded to Pakistan, not India, at the time of partition in 1947. Pakistan denies there are training camps, but even the militant supporters agree they exist.
I know when we go into the training camps and everything, in the eyes of this country, it might be classed as something that's wrong. But jihad and terrorism is worlds apart. People have to understand, you know? Like, it's different. I believe jihad is an obligation upon every male Muslim to help our Muslim brothers. In Islam, to protect your Muslim brother is regarded as something good.
A power outage, as we're being told from London Transport, if there are people covered in blood, limbs in the carriage as a consequence of this, that would seem to imply a major explosion.
I was driving down the M1 on my way into work, and I heard the first radio reports of incidents in the underground. I knew that one of them was in Edgware Road, so I made the decision to stop there and just see for myself what was going on. And it was apparent that this was something quite different to anything that we'd had to deal with in London before. The events of 11th of September 2001 changed everyone's perception about what a terrorist attack could look like.
Is your mind thinking, where's the 4th, where's the 5th?
Yes, where's the 5th, where's the 6th? Are there going to be some in Birmingham, Manchester?
I'm just standing on the street corner now. I look to my right and my left. I can see a couple of hundred people all working out where they're going to go.
and how they're going to get to where they need to be.
From my perspective, there is still this sense of what else might be about to happen.
Minding your own business, bang, and we thought we were on fire. The smell, the smoke, you couldn't breathe, you couldn't see anything. It was just horrible. I just want to get home.
There was people screaming, and there's people lying everywhere, covered in blood, and bodies lying everywhere. Saw some limbs. Everyone was choking, thinking they were going to die.
All hell's broken loose. We've had 3 explosions. The inspector sitting behind me just turned around to me. She says, "Neville, make your way down to Wood Street Police Station as fast as you can." We were approaching the traffic lights at the junction of Tavistock Place and Upper Woburn Place. The number 30 bus going to Hackney Wick and diverted down Tavistock Place was coming towards us. I think it drew level with the building I know very well, which is the British Medical Association building. We were about 120 yards from the bus. There was a very crisp, loud explosion. Human parts, a torso, a lot of debris coming out. There's only one thing that can do that, and that's a bomb. We can see people standing on the top deck. The priority is getting those that we can off the bus. There were injured people in there who were trapped. And looking up, yeah, you could see up there as well was an absolute tangled mess of metal and individuals who were injured.
Ladies and gents, please listen to me very carefully. I need you to move this way, please, as quick as you can. Okay, as quick as you can. Please stop having the phone.
Any conjecture about what was going on beneath ground couldn't have been answered in a more devastating way. It certainly bore the hallmarks of being an Al-Qaeda-type inspired attack. But we had to establish exactly what had taken place, who was responsible, and bringing them to justice.
The Metropolitan Police Service has all of its anti-terrorist units here, and we are beginning a meticulous investigation. That's all I'm going to say at the moment.
There's some suggestion it could have been a suicide bomber?
There's no reason to suggest that. There's no reason to deny that. It's just, you know, there is not enough information at this stage to make that a fact.
We knew nothing, and so you're operating in a vacuum of accurate information. The feeling was that the key lay within the forensic examination of the scenes.
It's surprising what survives an explosion. There's always something that leads back to identify who the actual bomber was. I was dealing with the Tavistock Square bus. My focus is on the device itself, on the physics and the chemistry. What caused this to happen? I'm looking to find power supplies, switches, wires. I'm looking for plastic fragments from a lunchbox or fragments from a rucksack. It was not straightforward. We found fragments which appeared to originate from the rucksack that the device had been carried in. There were fragments of a battery. There were some wires, but there was no switch or the initiator to an explosive device. There was nothing like that. That was strange. When we were doing examinations on the roof of the bus, there was a very apparent hole where a body had gone through. And there was one body that had been thrown out of the bus. It hit the side of the British Medical Association building and was lying on the pavement. Whoever it was had been very, very close to the bomb. The simplicity of the device and the lack of more complex components pointed to the individuals being the switches, simply attaching the battery to the device. They initiated the explosion. We realised it was a suicide bomb.
I wanted to help my Muslim brothers and I wanted to help liberate Muslim land. That's what I saw my goal in life. There's about 100, 200 brothers. The brothers used to give us lessons in how to use a Kalashnikov, dismantle a Kalashnikov, RPG, just basic weaponry. We got to shoot loads. It's a proper beautiful scenery because you're proper high up, and the mountain that we stayed on was very, very high, and you can see all of Kashmir. It's absolutely breathtaking. Me and Sadiq used to love it. But as soon as we come back from Pakistan, boom, boom, watching all planes going down, 9/11. 9/11 was a big shock. The use of suicide operation is strictly forbidden in Islam. If you kill innocent people, it's like killing all of mankind. But Sadiq would explain to me why he thinks it's a good idea. He'd say it's good because of this and that. He'd give some like evidences from history and everything, and I couldn't really understand him, yeah? Sadiq's he's one of them people, you know, it's his way or the highway. Like if he said something, he meant it.
If you're just tuning our way, it is coming up to 1:45 on the day it appears the capital has come under attack. A group calling itself a secret organisation, Al-Qaeda in Europe, has posted apparently a claim of responsibility for the blast in London. The group claimed the explosions were in retaliation for Britain's involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan. Of course, that is not confirmed.
We condemn utterly these barbaric attacks. We are united in our resolve to confront and defeat this terrorism that is not an attack on one nation, but on all nations and on civilized people everywhere. We send our profound condolences to the victims and their families.
Jeremy, thank you. 4 explosions, brutally timed for maximum impact. Here's what we know so far.
I'd been in an off-site meeting in a hotel. There were some tellies and news feeds, and we saw what was happening in London.
Passengers on trains and stations nearby.
I said to somebody, "Oh, my son's gone down to London today." And she said to me, "Are you worried?" And I said, "No." David, who just started a contract for working for somebody, he had to go to London for some meetings. The chances of winning the lottery are 1 in 13 million, I think it is. The chances of a lad from Oldham going to London on his own, first time he gets on the tube, being caught up in this are infinitesimally, incalculably small. So, no, I'm not worried.
It was mayhem, and then the driver came out of the carriage, and which was quite scary because he shone a red light, and we all thought I just thought, well, I thought I was dead.
A woman clearly in deep shock after what she has experienced.
12:40, I switched my phone on. And the very first message said, "Oh, just to tell you, Graham, that David didn't arrive for his meeting. I phoned the police." And I remember he was on the Circle line. I think he's probably just forgotten to get off at the right stop, and he's going round and round on the tube, hoping to find somewhere to get off. So I ignored that message, frankly. I phoned my wife, Janet, and she said, yes, I've just seen it as well. We'd been trying to phone him, of course, but we couldn't get through to him or even leave a message so that he could call us back. We were just trying to keep calm, thinking, no, this is something that happens to other people. It's not something that happens to us. No, we're sound, we're okay. Put the telly on, and of course we're Northerners, so we had a cup of tea, and we watched the news feed.
But I think it's worth emphasising that whoever has done this, a group or individuals, are clearly not known, because the assumption must be that all of those who've been watched by the security service were under surveillance yesterday and this morning, so they must be looking at individuals or a group that they weren't aware of.
Negative thoughts were going round and round in my head. My son Haseeb was missing in the city. I do not remember how many times I called him, but there was no answer. My wife watched the news with me. I cannot describe what was going on through our minds. The only thing we knew was that Haseeb went to London with his friends sightseeing. The police had no idea about Haseeb's whereabouts, but wrote down his details, his height, weight, and so on. I felt powerless, but I was praying for him. I feared the worst.
Tens of thousands tramping home tonight on foot across the capital. The underground system shut down. Liverpool Street, King's Cross and Edgware tube stations are crime scenes and will be shut for the foreseeable future. There are no buses, there are no taxis.
I was still trying to process what happened on that train in the dark underground, and who could do such a horrible thing. They gave me an eye patch, and I was discharged from the hospital. As we walk outside, I'm conscious that people are taking pictures of me. And then I'm stopped by some reporters.
I thought I wasn't going to get out of this, whatever it was, I didn't know. I thought that was it when it went all so dark. Could hear the screaming coming from the carriage just in front of us who took the full blast.
Quite frankly, I'd lost track of how many interviews I'd given. But I was aware that this transport system was down, and I was thinking of how I'm going to get home to West London. And two producers said to me, we can give you a lift home. And they said they'd been filming at the East London Mosque, which is right next to the hospital, and their car was there. At which point we were joined by two young boys.
Follow the news, all channels, 1 to 5, 2. You're lucky, man.
I'm very lucky, man.
Yeah, you're lucky.
Great, God.
How long were you there for?
About 25 minutes.
Did you have to walk through the tunnel?
Yeah, we walked through the tunnel and came up to Aldgate.
Yeah.
I'm walking somewhere around here.
When we got to the mosque, they said they've invited you in for tea, and I thought that's a good idea. Let's go in.
Can I offer you a cup of tea?
I have one brewing, actually. Thank you very much.
And then when I turned round, there was a line of young men, late teens, early 20s, and they all shook my hand and said how sorry they were.
Yeah. How did it feel in the train when you were bombed?
I didn't feel the pain, the physical pain to start with. I just remember being turned, twisted, not knowing what was happening and pushed down onto the ground. There was just so much glass. I was so surprised there's loads still in the pocket. I can't believe I got a handful of glass out in front of those children at the mosque. But I was pulling out my skull for years afterwards. I worked more out.
You hope that it's not Muslims responsible for it. You hope, because you know what's coming next. You know you're going to be blamed for it. 9/11 changed everything. A target was on us after that. Like, I know so many instances of friends who'll be like working in the supermarket and people go up to them and you should be ashamed of yourself for what happened. Like, how do we have any connection to like what happened on 9/11? Society looks at communities as these homogenous groups, right? The Muslim community. But what a Macedonian goes through is different from what someone from Afghanistan goes through, just by nature of politics. Or like folks in Chechnya. Do you know what I mean? It's so different. But, you know, it's easier to just say the Muslims. Around about lunchtime, we got home from the hospital, and because I'd spoken to some journalists, my number was being passed around by a lot of newspapers. And so I was getting constantly called.
Voicemail received at 13.
So I'd be on the phone with one journalist, and in that time I'd get 15 missed voice calls.
Hi there, my name's Mike from Time Magazine. Hello, my name is Claire Foster, the Daily Telegraph. Mr. Hi, my name's Susanna of the Times. Can you give me a ring, please? Next mail. Voicemail.
This goes on for 12 minutes. It's like a young Muslim who's willing to talk about it. The demographic is more likely to be radicalized. Why didn't it happen to you? Why is it happening? Are you like that as well? Are you the Trojan horse? You know, it's just the same crap over and over again.
Why are you talking today? Like,
there is kind of a religious obligation that I have to be here. Like there is, in Islam, you have to speak out against the tyrant. The tyrant is the terrorist who claims to represent Islam. The tyrant is the politician who wants to label all Muslims as one. The tyrant is the journalist who wants me to apologize for someone else's crime. The tyrant is the one who tells the lies. The one who's actually killing the people. That's the tyrant. And I have to speak truth. Otherwise I'm held accountable for not.
At the end of the day, I had to be forensically stripped. So all my clothing was taken off me. I had to go home in a paper suit. It's difficult to see such injury and carnage, knowing you've got to walk away from it. It's hard to tell people unless you've been there. I've never walked away from anybody who needed help, but on that day, I had to. I had to walk away. Otherwise, more would have died. And that would have been more people, perhaps, that I would have had on my conscience. So.
how I was treated in the mosque. It was really uplifting to just know that people, it's not their fault. There's always been extremists, there's always been people who don't represent a particular thing, they don't represent the main body of people who are decent people. We live in a world where people take a minimum of information and suddenly they've formed a very strong opinion without understanding the psychology, why people do things, why they're caught up. And most people aren't evil. That's just a construct we make. Most people, I like to think, are good.
Compared to what I've seen, it's not bad, I can assure you. OK, yeah, we'll see you there then. OK, bye.
But it wasn't lost on me that people wouldn't be making that journey home to their loved ones.
President George Bush said that America would back Britain every inch of the way and would be right behind Britain in hunting down and trying to capture the people responsible for today's attacks.
I appreciate Prime Minister Blair's determination. The war on terror goes on.
As we watched the news, the fear was starting to win the battle against staying calm and staying sensible. There was a phone number, an emergency phone line that kept coming up on the screen. So we phoned them. They simply said name, age, and here's a reference number. I think the very first reference number they gave us was N353. We didn't go to bed that night. We just watched telly constantly, and we were phoning this emergency number and phoning, and you just went through to a different person who just gave you a different reference number. So we ended up with dozens of different reference numbers.
Today's outrage unfolded on another ordinary morning as millions travelled to work or school. It happened over the course of 56 minutes.
There was no warning given, though there's growing speculation that Al-Qaeda was responsible. The Queen has offered her sympathy to all those affected.
At this point, we know that there are more than 50 fatalities. There were 700 casualties, and as far as we know, 22 are in serious and critical conditions in hospital.
We saw on the news that a significant number of people who were in intensive care are unconscious and who had yet to be identified. So that gave us some hope. We were hanging on to the theory that, well, the saying, isn't there, that no news is good news. And that was our glimmer of hope, that one of these unconscious, unidentified people was David.
Good morning, thanks for joining us. It is nearly 24 hours since a series of bombs were set off on London's public transport system.
The motivation for the attacks isn't yet clear, but Tony Blair blamed terrorists acting in the name of Islam.
Many years ago, family liaison officers were known as the Fluffy Bunny Brigade. Tea and sympathy, you know, pat on the back kind of thing. We were assigned to deal with people who were involved in tragedies, usually deaths. Families are multifaceted. You don't know what you're going into. And yes, you're dealing with grief, and people react very differently to grief. You have to expect the unexpected. I was informed that a youth from Beeston was reported missing, Hasib Hussein. He was 18 years old. He'd gone down to London with some friends and they couldn't get in touch with him. Quiet area. Nothing's changed here really, has it? It looks exactly the same as it did 20 years ago. I have sort of butterflies in my tummy and I feel a bit nauseous, but I guess it's just a feeling of revisiting a bad time in your past, isn't it? I was met by Mr. Hussein at the door. His other son was in. His wife was out. It was a very nice, neat house. The news was on the television.
So I was probably within 10 feet of where the blast was.
Mr. Hussein was concerned, anxious. He told me that his son, Hasib, had gone to London on Wednesday with some friends. He didn't know anything about where, when, why, or what he was doing down there. I asked if I could have a photograph of him, which he gave me. Mr. Hussein said to me he had gone around the mosques looking for Hasib, and what he did discover was that one of the friends he'd gone with was also missing, somebody called Shahzad Tanvir, and Mr. Hussein didn't know this was a friend of his son's.
The liaison officer came to see us. She asked about Hasib's religion. I told the liaison officer, Hasib was an ordinary Muslim boy, a son whom we were all proud. Before she left, it felt like she had made certain assumptions. I thought they'd found Hasib guilty of something. I did not like it at all.
It was apparent to me that Hasib's father didn't know much about his outside activities, where he went, who he saw, what circles he mixed in. But his other son never said much. I felt he had something to say, but couldn't say it in front of his father. I just felt something in my bones. Said goodbyes and left.
The morning rush hour in London saw large numbers of people heading into work. Many found their usual routes were barred. Even as they tried to carry on as normal, it was of course obvious this was no ordinary day.
Although we know that the 4 bombers are dead, we had to be absolutely certain that they weren't part of a larger network that were going to carry out another attack. On the 8th of July, the first major breakthrough. Identity documents of an individual is found at 2 different bomb scenes. So you start putting together a picture that here's one of the individuals who may have been involved. Mohammed Sadiq Khan.
After his daughter was born, Sid invited all the brothers to come to his house.
Very good with this video. We've got your uncles in the other room, so I'll go and introduce you to them shortly. It's your uncle, Kakak Minashir.
He would regard us as uncles to his daughter.
Sorry, this is my Marita.
That's me. Hasib were there. Sadiq seems to have made friends with him.
There's Mr. Palwan, 2-year-old. Hello, Pale. Hello, Pale. So there's Mr. Pius that ate everything.
We were calling Shahzad Pius.
Pious tea.
He never used to like it.
Come on then, pious. You see it?
He was really religious from even a young age. From about 14, 15, he started growing his beard and everything.
You find it chilling out with your church? We don't want that in.
We used to chat about 9/11. What the Americans did is equally as wrong. They went and indiscriminately bombed everything that moved.
Every nation now has a decision to make. Either you are with us, or you are with the terrorists.
American and the coalition forces, they went and invaded. It was like a snowball effect, from Kashmir to Afghanistan. Me and the brothers, our ultimate aim was the same, fighting against occupation. In 2004 was a completely different ballgame. The plan seemed to have changed. Sadiq goes, me and Shazad, we're going to go back to England and we're going to go do something. A couple of things for the brothers. He said, keep away, bruv. I did feel really left out and sad. But I thought, whatever they want to do, let them do it.
Have to do this thing for our future.
I got a phone call, and then the world sort of exploded.
Armed officers surround a house preparing for a raid.
I just couldn't believe what I'd walked into. I was like, right, we really need to get out of here right now.
I just feel that something's gone totally wrong for that guy to have been involved, because he was a really nice guy.
We are at war, and I'm a soldier. Now you too will taste the reality of this situation.
Should I press play?
Yeah, press play.
I'm going to keep this short to the point. I and thousands like me have forsaken everything for what we believe, our driving motivation.
I knew Mohammed Sadiq Khan. He was a good friend of mine.
I'm sure by now the media's painted a suitable picture of me, this predictable propaganda machine.
The Sid that I knew was a good man. The guy in the video, I don't know who that was. Something was wiped from him.
Your democratically elected governments
continuously perpetuate atrocities against my people all over the world.
Even the way he was speaking, I didn't recognize the way he was speaking in those mind-numbing, closed-down cliches. It's like a bad movie, kind of Al-Qaeda speak. We will fight the infidel. He never spoke like that.
Our religion is Islam, obedience to the one true God, Allah.
I'm unable to work out how he got from there to there.
We are at war, and I'm a soldier.
And that's the thing I still sometimes struggle to work out.
Now you too will taste the reality of this situation.
There have been a series of terrorist attacks in London.
But this is the biggest crime scene in English history.
So far, all the evidence, the coordinated explosions, points to Al-Qaeda.
How did 4 young British men end up becoming suicide bombers in their own country?
What makes a person do such a thing?
You can't unsee what you see. It stays with you forever. But you must always talk about it. It's the only way that people remember the atrocity that happened. I was assigned the job of removing the bodies from Russell Square. The first time we walked down to make our way to the scene, there was a foot at the end of the platform, just a foot on its own. It was a sign of things to come. The carnage in that one carriage is really unfathomable. Each body is a different experience, and you've got to remove them, and you've got to remove them in a sensitive way. They belong to someone. They're someone's loved one. There was a poor woman. If I do that, that's like she was across the seats. I can't forget the pleading on her face, because she had no legs. You see, her legs being blown off, so there was no one to help her. She was going to die there. It was impossible to save her. Having information from the other scenes, we were aware it was a suicide bomber. So each individual body was treated as a suspect. It was a priority to identify the bomber and remove that body as quick as possible so that it could be forensically worked on. We didn't know who the bomber was. We had a good idea. His body was mostly brains on the top of the carriage, which I scraped off.
Floral tributes grow as the wait for news continues. The authorities say they're working as fast as they can in the conditions to deliver the answers so many people seek.
I need to know what happened to my Anthony. He's the love of my life. My first son. My first son, 26. But I need to know where he is. I need to know what happened to him.
So far, all the evidence, the coordinated explosions, and the ruthlessness in picking soft civilian targets all points to Al-Qaeda.
This is Scotland Yard's command centre, coordinating every incident, every response. But there are thousands more working behind the scenes on the investigation, both here and at MI5. And there is a real sense of urgency.
We had 4 bodies at the sites of the explosions. Their bodies were so significantly disrupted that they could only have been the 4 bombers. But to be able to positively identify them, you need forensic evidence. What we had were identity documents of a Mohammed Sadiq Khan found at 2 different bomb scenes. Mohammed Sadiq Khan was a classroom assistant from West Yorkshire. For the investigation, it was the first major line of inquiry.
We express our revulsion at this murderous carnage. We will pursue those responsible, wherever they are.
Even though I was in no way involved in anything that happened, I would be frightened to show my face. I'm a Pakistani man. I feel like I was born with a target on my back and I don't want to put one on my front.
Tell me about Mohammed Sadiq Khan.
I called him Sid. We were good friends. Maybe it's quite difficult for people to hear, but he was a sweet guy. And this might sound really strange, but the person that I knew would actually take the piss out of a lot of the dogmatic teachings of Islam, or talk about some of the imams and how simplistic they spoke. You take the mick out of it. Sid was a youth worker. The young people looked up to him. He was a very earnest guy. He had a very clear idea of what was right and wrong. He was very much affected by things that he thought were wrong.
Come on, Eddie, you bang it out there. Right, I'll catch you two messing around with my brother again. I'm gonna come round to your house and tell you about it.
And if he thought something was wrong, he would take matters into his own hands. He would do something about it. He really cared, you know. He used to get the kids off heroin. We'd actually snatch them, chain them up in a room and make them go cold turkey. People tell me who had that it was one of the best things that happened to them in all their life. They're incredibly grateful. Nothing else could get them off heroin. He was fearless, authentic, from Beeston, like me. Beeston was shit and was recognised to be shit. It was like a dumping ground. Huge amounts of racism, poverty, deprivation, big history of drug problems. It was just a place where people had very little life chances. Let's be clear, I mean, we had fuck all in the area. What were we going to do? Work in a takeaway, be a taxi driver. Very hard for people who've not had that experience to understand it.
Friends and families of the missing gathered outside the stations where their loved ones were last seen alive, looking for any slender hope that they may somehow have survived.
We watched the news constantly for any clues to where David might have been. We just started phoning hospitals and got nowhere because they obviously weren't going to tell us anything. It was confidential, but you don't know that at the time. You're in a state of panic, you're in a state of fear. And the more they say no, the more fearful you become.
Robert Webb's sister Laura writes...
I actually went out and bought all the newspapers. We had them spread out all over the floor, desperately combing them to find out any information at all. And there was a knock at our front door, late morning, and there was a young police officer in plain clothes, and she held up a warrant card and asked if she could come in. That was a real heart-sink moment. Anyway, she came in and she explained she was from Greater Manchester Police and she'd simply been ordered to come and take mouth swabs. And of course, we asked lots of questions, you know, what is he, what's happening, and so on and so on. And I think she was quite embarrassed, really, because I genuinely do not know. I've just been told to come and take mouth swabs. So she took the mouth swabs and then she took the tubes, and there was a motorcycle courier outside. She gave them to him and he vanished. We were just so anxious and so worried, so full of dread, thinking about David. Where is he? We hope he's okay.
My son was missing since Wednesday. Hasib had told me he was going to London, sightseeing with his friends. I was in a very bad state. I do not remember how many times I called him, but there was no answer. The liaison officer came to see us. It felt like she had made certain assumptions. I did not like it at all.
I visited the family of a Hasib Hussein. I remember Mr. Hussein's oldest son. I felt he had something to say, but couldn't say it in front of his father. So just before I left the house, I surreptitiously passed my telephone number on a piece of paper to him. I just felt something.
I could not sit still. All I could think about was my son and where he could be. It was like a horrible nightmare. I was fearful. I asked some people about Haseeb, but no one could tell me anything. I then went into the Iqra bookshop. I asked the man at the counter if he knew Haseeb. He told me he didn't, but I knew he was lying. Finally, he said, Haseeb may be with Sid. I asked who Sid was and where I could find him. He then said he may be with Shahzad Tanveer. They were also missing. I suspected something was very wrong.
Later that evening, I got a phone call from Haseeb's older brother, the one I'd passed the phone number to. He told me that he had searched his brother's bedroom after I left and found a mobile phone. There was only one number on it, so he rang it, and a gentleman answered. He said that he had rented a property to his brother at Alexandra Grove. Haseeb's brother went round to the address, looked in the window. He said to me, I think something awful has been going on in there. You better get round there.
Rush hour carnage in Madrid. 3 trains are blown up in a devastating attack on the Spanish capital.
191 people were killed and more than 1,500 injured. The multiple, synchronized nature of the attacks is Al-Qaeda's signature.
We had all lived through the consequences of the police raids in Madrid, where terrorists who were still within the premises blew the place up when the police entered, killing a police officer. So there was a marked sense of potential danger in the search of Alexandra Grove.
One of the big things that you're considering when you know it's a high-threat task, are they targeting me? But once you're ready to go down the road, it's just you. You're on your own, you're down there, facing off with whatever it is you're dealing with.
Armed officers surround a house preparing for a raid.
General rule of thumb, everybody's expecting you to go through the door. So make your own entry point. Pop the window to gain access into the building and climb through and started looking round. Just couldn't believe what I'd walked into. Lots of tools, wires, batteries, respirators, mobile phone boxes, a hot plate in both bedrooms, empty ice bag wrappers. It was immediately obvious it was a bomb factory. Every surface was covered in this white powder where they'd clearly been boiling off chemicals and trying to make homemade explosives. When you stood in the bathroom, the bath was about 1/3 filled with water, with these tubs floating around with like an orange material in. It's actually bubbling. You could see it bubbling and as if it was boiling. I did 23 years in the military. It took me to Afghanistan, Northern Ireland, and Iraq. I'd never seen that before. It was awful. It was in a real mess. I could tell that the bombers definitely weren't a professional terrorist organization. It was amateur hour. For the police, so the place was a jackpot, but extremely dangerous. I was like, right, we really need to get out of here right now and rethink what we're doing.
As soon as the police found the bomb factory, the world sort of exploded. And the next day, there was like wall-to-wall counter-terrorism Met officers all over Beeston.
All this after passing your number to Hasib's brother. Lucky, isn't it?
It wasn't luck. Women's intuition. I get a lot of that.
Alexandra Grove contained a vast amount of forensic evidence, including DNA. And that's in addition to identity documents found on the sites of the explosions. Quickly thereafter, the CCTV from King's Cross gives us the images of the 4 bombers carrying rucksacks. Mohammed Sadiq Khan,
A father of one, it's believed he was responsible for the bomb at Edgware Road.
Shazad Tanweer,
A 22-year-old sports science student is thought the cricket fan blew himself up on the Aldgate train.
Jermaine Lindsay,
A British resident born in Jamaica, was responsible for the Russell Square attack.
and Hasib Hussain.
Hasib Hussain, he is suspected of being the bomber on the bus in Tavistock Square.
I had to tell the family that their son, who was the day before the missing person, potentially a victim, was now a suspect in this atrocity. And we're telling them, we're going to examine your home from top to bottom. No choice, you're out. We're coming in, and you are potentially suspects as well. My role altered drastically. I am now working with a murderer's family. I was a bit nervous, but it's got to be done. I just had to get on with it.
They said Hasib had something to do with the blasts. I was holding my wife's hand as she heard the news. Her hand slipped away. The liaison officer told us our house was surrounded by armed officers and had a warrant to search the house. My whole body was shaking. I was shocked and in disbelief.
This CCTV picture is the first to show the 4 bombers together. On the left is teenager Hasib Hussain, the youngest of the bombers. A short time later, and Hasib Hussain is captured again, a clearer image showing his rucksack carrying the explosives.
The television started showing pictures of Hasib. I kept telling myself, Hasib could not be involved. My mind was full of suspicion. I couldn't accept that he would go to London and bomb a bus.
They didn't take it well. Mr. Hussain collapsed on the sofa. He would just say, no, it's not my son. You've doctored the CCTV. It's not Hasib. You know, he just wouldn't have it. And eventually I just stopped trying to convince him. I couldn't tell him. I can understand the reason for their denial. It's an absolute mammoth thing to get your head round, that your son, who was perfection in their eyes, could have done this. It must have been an awful thing for them to come to terms with.
Well, there's still a sense of huge shock here in West Yorkshire that the bombers were living amongst people here. They were part of their communities. Many people were their friends, and they knew their families.
Hasib Mir Hussain, just 18 years old, from the multiracial Holbeck area of Leeds.
He was a good pillar to the community, I can't say no else, because he was.
Shazad Tanweer, a 22-year-old sports science student.
He was a very kind and caring person. He was respected by everybody.
Mohammed Sadiq Khan, his house is shrouded in plastic as forensic experts search for clues.
can't be Mr. Khan, it can't be, they must have got it wrong. Somebody's got it wrong somewhere. But I just feel that something's gone totally wrong for that guy to have been involved, because he was a really nice guy.
As soon as we got the names of the 4 bombers, we're certainly digging into everything you can discover about their lives. The spotlight is on everybody who surrounds somebody who becomes a terrorist. Who gave them any material assistance? Who may have known they were going to do it and did nothing about trying to prevent them?
Tonight, Western intelligence agencies are working hard to establish if there are direct links between the bombers and those around Osama bin Laden. Evidence, especially the connections of the bombers to Pakistan, is raising that possibility.
When I heard about what happened, I couldn't make sense of what was going on. And then it kind of sunk in. The last time I saw Sid, he'd been to Pakistan. And he came back and he said, oh, you know, I want to catch up with you. So I said, look, I'm really busy. And he said, no. He was really insistent. Really, really insistent. So I met him. And he seemed very different. Really peaceful. Now, obviously, looking back, I realized that he had planned what he was going to do. In his own mind, he was going to die and he was saying goodbye to me. But I didn't know that at the time, obviously. Nobody had a clue. Nobody had a clue. You know, there were only a few times in my life that I completely broke down sobbing. I mean, just sobbing. I mean, for what he did, the damage he caused. What the fuck did you think you were going to achieve?
In the quiet suburbs of Leeds, police continue to mount a large-scale security operation around the homes of 3 of the 4 alleged suicide bombers. This follows the breakthrough yesterday when anti-terrorist police carried out raids on the houses.
The bombers, they'd been working there for a while, producing their homemade explosives. It's shockingly easy. Yeah, you can walk around any popular DIY outlet and you can buy the components. I know there was in excess of 100 explosive-related items removed. 4 of them haven't done that. There was no way 4 of them had done that on their own. They recovered something like 5, 6, 7 respirators. So from when they were working in there.
Hints at more people.
Hints at more people. In a bedroom, on the sideboard was a day sack, a backpack with what looked like a 5 to 10 litre tub inside that was filled with this orange explosive material, ready to be picked up and taken away.
Was that a 5th device?
I believe it was. It was just waiting, it was just sat there. Did somebody bottle out?
What the police will be doing now is trying to reconstruct as much of the bombers' lives over the last year or 2 as they possibly can, working backwards, trying to understand who they were, who they met with, what their lifestyles were, in great detail.
In Beeston, there's no trust of the police whatsoever. There was this big thing about all the Muslims are terrorists, just going to raid everybody. Like, you're guilty by association. You know, you're in danger. I remember being quite terrified.
Attention has been focused on this bookstore. We know that 3 of the men were customers here.
The Iqra bookshop, it was a place where there were Islamic books, videos, and there's a place in the back with a kitchen where people would hang out. I can remember seeing Sid there, joking around. There was one time where a guy called me in. Look at this video. There was a guy being, I think, beheaded. What the fuck do you want to show me that for? It was sickening. It was shocking. I never went back there again.
Beeston this afternoon, almost an area under siege. The focus, of course, for these police investigations, which have seen dramatic and fast-moving developments.
And now people are left wondering how men that they knew could be capable of such horrific attacks.
Just don't know to trust in the Muslim Asian community anymore. Now I've got 3 young children at home, aged 12, 13 and 10. I'm thinking, you know, they're going to be in school one day and the school's going to go. Because there's Asian boys in the school, are they going to be took away by the families, brainwashed and brought back and blown the school up or anything?
It is very, very scary living in the community that everyone thinks everyone is together, but really it's not. It's just not a nice place to live at the moment.
Why do you think that Mohammed Sadiq Khan was radicalised?
You know, people ask, how could this happen? But if you look closely enough, you can probably find some reasons probably why that would happen. Some people might have drifted towards radicalisation because primarily they felt they didn't belong. Our parents had a sense of who they were around Pakistan, but so our sense of who we were formed from, you know, the toxic environment that we lived in.
But they never asked us if we wanted them. We didn't want them. We've always hated them. Hated the mortal sights on them.
We grew up with the far right. The National Front targeted Bradford, Burnley, Oldham. And don't forget, our parents first came across and were putting up with it. But the second generation, we'd had enough of it.
From the city centre, the rioting spread and continued into the early hours, just after the National Front threatened to march through the city.
I mean, the Bradford riots happened because there's lots and lots of just frustration. The National Front, you know, they're going to come, they're going to march through the town and do all these things to us. I think people just had enough by then. Just the constant racism, it sinks into you. The language that we'd use against you all the time, like, you dirty fucking packy. The word dirty and packy to me was synonymous. I really grew up believing that there was something wrong with me. I was less than human, I was subhuman. Extremists see that pain. You've had pain, you've suffered shame, humiliation, they know that. And then they'll basically say, oh, the pain is so intolerable that if you go and do something like a big act, basically you'll have great meaning and you'll be free of the pain. That's what these fuckers do.
I've realized who is your enemy.
There is nothing that could excuse what happened, but you need to understand why it happened so that it doesn't happen again.
The nature of intelligence work is that you're trying to get ahead of those who wish to do us harm. That is what MI5 is trained to try and do. We became aware of Al-Qaeda and the Islamist threat early on in the 90s. After 9/11 and our involvement in Iraq, we did warn the government that would be likely to increase the terrorist threat. The government knew that that was a possibility, indeed a probability.
Pull your troops out of Iraq! And if you do not pull your troops out, you will get bloodshed on the streets of London.
MI5 had been worried about the radicalisation of a small proportion of British Muslims, some of them third-generation British, who turned to this ideology that the West was engaged in hostility towards the Muslim world. The narrative was that Islam was under attack from the West, that Western democracies were complicit in attacks on Muslims, and the people who'd voted them in, the electorate of those Western democracies, therefore deserved to be punished.
As the investigation continues, claims are emerging of security failures in the run-up to the bombings. It's an allegation British police deny.
Regarding the 4 people who went and did the 7/7 bombing, I have more than an insight because I am one of the pioneers of violent jihad in the UK. We would use Islamic teachings, to show that it is a virtue to fight for the oppressed and to bring justice to those who have been exploited or harmed. Recruitment takes place by talking about victimhood, talking about domination from non-Muslims. If you have suffered racism, they would come into play as well. We normalized the idea of fighting back and terrorism. I've seen a lot of people, normal people, become jihadists. We would like to be able to predict who are more likely to turn. In my understanding, that's impossible. It can't be done. Someone who seems to be perfectly lovable can turn, and they can be easily misled or sidestepped into other people's ambitions. The UK gave refuge to a lot of Islamist people. Abu Hamza gained a lot of traction. And Abu Qatada. And Sheikh Abdul Al-Faisal was an utter extremist.
When there's a jihad, you need to know who to kill. So it's important to know who's a Muslim and who's a Kafir.
Together, we all belong to the same so-called jihad enterprise. We traveled up and down the country preaching. People gravitated around me, and at times I would have gatherings of thousands of people. Islam is very easily hijacked or used by ignorant imams or someone like me who was half-baked in understanding Islam and religious material to say, well, I want to go to paradise, dying, fighting for the sake of God. And once you're in paradise, you are happy forever, and everything is forgiven.
Britain's Muslim community has once again become the focus of the world's media. But for the vast majority of British Muslims, there's nothing but contempt for the terrorists.
We are very dismayed, very shocked, confused, and I think also embarrassed as well that young people from our neighborhoods and our community could commit this level of atrocities.
Many here feel that their community will be blamed for the bomb attacks.
Just feel the eyes burning through your skin. It's like, you know, is he one of those people that would do that kind of stuff?
Islamophobia is a common thing now. It's open to be Islamophobic.
We are fearful of backlash.
After 7/7, I was asked to attend a meeting in Beeston. What I was told is that law enforcement went in heavy-handed, labelled the whole community as being complicit, and found them guilty. Once they'd done that, they lost the trust of that community. And of course, they started to arrest people. And so I was being told, you need to come up there and you need to tell people what their rights are. When I got there, it was a packed-out meeting. Everyone was terrified. You could see from people's eyes that they didn't know what was going on. And they were desperate for information and advice. One of my first clients was accused of being involved in it on the basis that he was simply going into a house where Mohammed Sadiq Khan lived, and he had nothing to do with 7/7. But the police were under huge pressure. They were desperate for information. They just needed to get something to satisfy the public. And yes, I suspect more people knew about it than perhaps is even known today. But the assumption was these Asians, they ate together, they prayed together, therefore they must know what each other was thinking and doing. And that, of course, is stereotypical, that's prejudicial, that is institutional racism
in action.
In the immediacy of that week, we had no thoughts about the bombers, the fact that it was a terrorist attack. I know that the newspapers had published the names of the 4 bombers, but we were so focused on David that that just passed us by. We weren't interested. We were just solely focused on news about David. I have moments of real clarity, but there are whole days over which we have no memories. I mean, Tuesday, Wednesday of the week after the attack, I have absolutely no idea what we did. But I remember the phone call at 6:20 in the evening. And it was a police officer saying, "We need to come and see you. Are you at home?" And that was a, oh my God moment. And I said, "You're telling me that David's died?" And they were resistant from telling me. I said, "No, you wouldn't want to come and see me if it was bad, if it was good news. You'd tell me now, wouldn't you?" And they said, "Yes, we can confirm that David died at Edgware Road." So I came in, sat down and told her. And we had a hug and we had a cry. And we told some friends, we told family. And then we went to bed. A difficult night, we didn't really sleep. We tried to remember all the good things, which was easy because we had so many. He was very bright, very quick-minded, a lively lad. And I'm his father, so I'm going to tell you he's the best son that's ever lived. The last time we saw David was the night before the attack. David was invited down to London, a bit of a last-minute invitation. So we had to do a journey plan to get him from Euston to Farringdon, the Circle line. I remember saying to him, at that time of the morning, it'll be rammed. So when the doors open, take 2 paces forward and grab a pole, and just do not move. David was killed by Mohammed Sadiq Khan at Edgware Road. He got on the Circle line, but went the wrong way. It was his first trip to London, and his first time on the tube. So that was hard to hear.
With fresh leads emerging all the time, in Buckinghamshire, police have been scouring a house which it's believed had been rented by the King's Cross bomber.
Jermaine Lindsay, he was the 4th bomber. A 19-year-old from a very different demographic background who is a convert to Islam at some point in his teens.
Jermaine Lindsay's classmates said they found him increasingly difficult to talk to in the final years of school.
And he came back with this totally different attitude.
He said he was a Muslim.
One summer, did he?
One summer.
I think so.
One summer.
Like he was saying.
He took Urdu lessons and he was passionate about his religion, passionate, and that was his life. His religion was his life.
Yeah, well.
It appears that he had had a challenging family and domestic background and seems to have completely changed personality, and then turns up as one of the 4 bombers on the 7th of July.
Was that a big question mark for you? How are they connected?
Early days, but then the common denominator became geographic. We learned that Jermaine Lindsay had met up with the others because they frequented the same areas and had similar influences.
I cannot deny playing a vital role, a pivotal role in the Islamization of Jermaine Lindsay.
We're getting bodies out for probably 10 days. We were all exhausted. We were down there 18 hours a day minimum, every day. It would take about 8 hours or more to get one body out.
How do you feel towards the bomber?
It's a hard question, isn't it? To see the amount of death that he caused, innocent people, well, can I hate him? I don't know. I could probably hate him. And there is a photograph of me driving an electric train, but it's like I'm not there. I look into my eyes and I don't see me. It's when you start to reflect upon it, and the subsequent effect it's had on your life. You've seen senseless death. It's always there, it doesn't go away. It's something you don't want to burden anybody else with because of the horrors of it. It's a personal thing. I remember the last day when we left Russell Square and we walked into Russell Square Gardens, which was just a sea of flowers and I just cried. I sobbed. Russell Square is the best thing I ever did in my life. Because I looked after the people that were dead.
Police officers came to tell us that David was in the mortuary and would we like to go and see him. We'd been warned that it would be difficult. But you have to see your son. You can't not see him. So we went in and sat with him for a while. There was no conscious thoughts going through our minds at that point. Our brains were just full of emotion. So there was no real thought. I remember we were just together. And then we came out and I was given a cardboard box the size of a shoebox. And in it were the few bits and pieces of David's belongings. David's birthday is in March, so for his birthday I bought him a watch. It was completely unmarked, despite the fact David was only a metre away from the bomb. The next thing that we decided we'd do was we'd get on the tube, go to Edgware Road. So we were just passengers getting on a very busy train and we just went a few stops, just like all the other commuters. It was just something that Janet and I needed to do, to be on that journey that David must have taken. And we also felt it was an important message because we weren't prepared to give anything to the bombers that they'd achieved something by making people fearful of the tube.
I have finally and reluctantly come to the conclusion that my son was involved in the bus blast. Haseeb must have perceived his victims as faceless strangers, rather than people with loves, lives, families and careers. Why did he seek this notoriety? Did he convince himself he would be rewarded?
Mr. Hussein went through the usual stages of grief, disbelief, anger. He was very angry at one point. We had a few angry days, you know, and then I would just make my visits brief. I knew when to withdraw. I do wonder why Haseeb did what he did, because he came from such a loving family. When it became apparent that they had no knowledge of their son's involvement, all they wanted was his body back. That's all they kept saying, we just want his body back. Why can't we have his body back? And of course I couldn't. It took a long time to get his body back. There wasn't much of him to come back, to be honest. Very, very little. And as soon as they did get the body back, that was it. I wasn't allowed in the house anymore. The shutters came down.
Was Haseeb entirely aware of what he was doing? And if so, what inspired him to blow himself up? Could I have done anything to spot my son's radicalization? If I or any member of my family had suspected anything about Haseeb, I would have spoken to him, but we never saw anything suspicious. This is the uncomfortable truth. It is a truth I have wrestled with over the years.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner has appealed to Muslim communities to end what he called a denial that there were extremists in their midst.
It is not the police, it is not the intelligence services who will defeat terrorism, it is communities who will defeat terrorism. We have to seize a moment in which the Muslim communities of Britain changes from a current position of shock and disbelief into active engagement in counter-terrorism.
The jihadist rhetoric had been so rampant in the UK.
Prepare as much as you can.
You know, people are bound to get radicalized.
From strength and from horse to terrified, terrorize.
For a long time, I lived for death, I believe, because I was committed to attaining what we considered martyrdom. That is the problem. The people like myself or Muhammad Siddiq Khan, we believed in what we were going to do or did to have been according to what pleases God. But it was wrong. By the grace of God, I have been afforded the time to think, to learn, to reflect and change. So I do what I do now. If I had met Muhammad Siddiq Khan, I would have sat down with him and said, "Brother, who convinced you against the Prophet's teaching? Why are you so naive? That this is not Islam. This is something God hates. This is something the Prophet would not have approved." What I would try and foster is think for yourself. Who are you? You are accountable to God. Much of jihad is waged because we want to help suffering people. We are not taught to see the suffering on the other side. That's where the mistake lies.
After 7/7, once the bomber's identity was known, you wonder whether could we have prevented what had happened. You need to look back to see if we'd missed something, if there were lessons to be learned. Looking back, we discovered Mohammed Sadiq Khan and Shahbaz Tanweer in the margins of the crevice plot. The plan was to kill large numbers of people. Their targets were nightclubs, synagogues, and shopping centres. We had extensive coverage of that plot, and we knew who the plotters were. Our judgment at the time, and I'm sure this was correct, was that Mohammed Sadiq Khan and Shahbaz Tanweer weren't part of the crevice plot. The leader of the crevice had something like 4,000 contacts. It's not feasible to identify all of those. Omar Khayyam was the leader of the crevice plot.
When 7/7 happened, I was at the Old Bailey representing Omar Khayyam.
And I suppose you had absolutely no idea there was any connection.
Oh, I had no idea at the time that there was any connection with any of this, but I realised, having done a few terrorism cases, that the same names came up, the same methodology came up. There was links, whether directly or indirectly. There was a network, and that was clear.
Get in, bro.
How long does it take to get to the training camp?
You go into the tribal areas. I'll tell you up there you can get your head cut off. Don't tell your real name to no one.
With regards to the baby, I'm debating whether or not to say goodbye.
When the time comes for you to leave at the end of the day, tell them you love them. It's because we love the Islamic way of life this much. That's why we stay away from them. I know it's better for them. It's a one-way ticket, bruv.
Not got too long to go now, and I'm gonna really miss you. I'm doing what I'm doing for the sake of Islam. I just so much wanted to be with you, but I have to do this thing for our future.
During the wiretap in the car, they are discussing travelling to Pakistan to go to terrorist training camps. Would that not trigger the need to identify this person?
We didn't know of that till after 7/7. But even had we picked it up at the time, they were talking about leaving and not coming back. There was clearly no plot. There was no 7/7 plot.
Pakistan, do you feel like that is a point where they link up with Al-Qaeda for the first time?
What I feel or not feel is irrelevant. But guessing, it appears that while they were there, it was suggested to them that their efforts would be better spent attacking the UK.
Your democratically elected governments continuously perpetuate atrocities against my people all over the world.
Whether they thought that for themselves, or instructed, or inspired, I don't know.
We are at war, United Soldier.
Now you too will taste the reality of this situation.
We need to establish a number of things. Who supported them? Who financed them? Who trained them? Who encouraged them?
I feared that Mohammed Sadiq Khan and Shahzad Tanweer, they were part of a larger network that were going to carry out another attack. 7/7 wasn't just an isolated event.
We're getting reports of a series of incidents.
We're going now, please keep moving.
This could be a second wave of attacks.
It's a bomb. He's trying to kill us.
What went on was madness. Residents were fleeing for their lives.
They're not warriors. They were just cowards.
It was at this Berlin police station that German police stumbled on Al-Qaeda's crown jewels. Hidden inside a pornographic video, buried on tiny data chips like this, hidden in the underwear of an Al-Qaeda suspect, 141 heavily encrypted documents. Written by the man responsible for the London subway attacks July 7th, 2005. A British Pakistani, Rashid Ralph.
The meeting had a profound effect on the brothers. In just a few days, Haji persuaded them to conduct a suicide bombing in the UK. We discussed the targets they should concentrate on. The Bank of England, the G8 summit in Scotland, or the London Underground. The choice was theirs.
There have been a series of terrorist attacks in London.
But this is the biggest crime scene in English history.
So far, all the evidence, the coordinated explosions, points to Al-Qaeda.
How did 4 young British men end up becoming suicide bombers in their own country?
What makes a person do such a thing?
In the past few minutes, a crane has begun lifting one of the wrecked underground trains involved in the London bombings. The carriage has been winched out of a tunnel leading to Edgware Road Station. It will be moved by lorry to a police compound for further forensic examination.
Within terrorist organisations, the bomb maker is a skilled, technical and prized individual. They are protected. The people that go out and put the devices down are disposable. In the days after 7/7, materials and evidence was constantly being relayed down to the laboratory. We keep a database of components used in improvised explosive devices. The information has been collected over decades, not only from mainland UK, but from Afghanistan, Libya, Iraq, Essentially, each device carried almost a fingerprint. That helps us to identify different terrorist groups. But with 7/7, it was very obvious we were dealing with hydrogen peroxide explosives that we'd never seen before. You do start to wonder who's been teaching these people to make devices like this. Where have they learned this?
While taking the explosives course, the 7/7 brothers' bomb teacher was impressed and considered them good students. After testing the hydrogen peroxide mixture, both Sadiq and Shahzad were very happy. Before heading back to Britain, we agreed code words for communication. We would use Yahoo Messenger, changing emails every few weeks. Once back in the UK, I instructed them to do nothing in case MI5 was suspicious about their trip to Pakistan. But after 3 weeks, they could start buying the bomb components, as they were ready for martyrdom operations.
I see myself as a survivor of 7/7, not as a victim. I'd been in a coma for 2 weeks, and then I woke up. My husband, Stephen, when he saw me, he said, "Thank God you were alive." That was his first reaction, "Thank God you were alive." I was in ICU and I was very disorientated. The consultant sat quickly in my right foot. I had feelings on my right, but they were not asking me about my left. And they said to me they did their best to save my left foot, but unfortunately they had to amputate. And I said, "Will I be able to walk again?" They said, "It's highly unlikely." It was quite frightening because I still don't fully understand what happened, why I was here in the hospital. There was an assumption that I knew.
But you didn't?
No, I didn't. Until I switched the television on.
The suicide bombers of 7 July were not Pakistanis. It is true that 3 were of Pakistani origin, and at least 2 had travelled to Pakistan on a number of occasions. But all 4 were British.
That's when I realised it was a bomb.
Muslims here described their agony that un-Islamic acts were being done in the name of Islam.
British Muslims have got a choice. Either you confront the evil or you condone it. There are no other options, there's no in between, and it's as simple as that. And the overwhelming majority are going for the former.
I've heard one imam after another, one leader after another condemn it. No ifs, no buts, this is murder.
As I was lying there with life-changing injuries, I was thinking, what makes a person do such an awful, awful thing? I was looking into their eyes to see if there's something I could see. But, you know, they just look like normal, ordinary people like you and me. Which is probably one of the reasons why I didn't notice the bomber next to me.
still no sign of enough rain to make a difference about the water shortage in southeast England. If anything, this week is going to get sunnier and warmer. Tomorrow...
You are making your way onto the Metropolitan line. Of course, from the attacks a couple of weeks ago, there's no service Moorgate to Aldgate, no service on the Piccadilly line between Almsbury.
Hi, Greg. Are the terrorists winning?
Definitely not. This afternoon, I'm getting the tube to meet friends. We're going to have a few drinks. I'm looking forward to it immensely.
I think that there is something to be said for the fact that Londoners are indeed stoic. They have to go to work, they do what they do, they've been through these things before.
When you see fellow Londoners going about their business, you can't help but feed off that sense of confidence and defiance. It heartens me and it warms me and it makes me step up to that.
The tube's essential, isn't it? I chose to use it in the immediate aftermath of 7/7. Because if you change your behaviour, then of course the people who are trying to terrorise you actually win. And the chances of it happening again are very slim, and the chance of it happening to me are very slim. At the time, I was a firefighter, and I was going to work. The train wasn't full, but there were people in the carriage, and the woman opposite me had a baby, and at the time I had a small family, and she was struggling with the child. And then the train pulled into Stockwell. And so lots of people got on, lots of people got off. Doors close and the train pulls off. And the moment we enter the tunnel, the first thing that happened was there was lots of screaming. And the woman opposite me was out of her seat and she was struggling with the buggy. And there were people behind us as well. And I'm saying to them, get out, get out, get out. I can see there's a man halfway down and I think he needs help. The overriding smell is one of burning hair, so I think he's burnt the back of his head. But then I can see the remains of a rucksack. And inside is this spewing foam, plastic, and it's fizzing and it's popping. I said, what's that? And I swore a number of times at him. I said, what's that? What's that? You tell me what that is. And he said, this is bread. I said, it's bread, it's not bread. It's a bomb, and you're trying to kill all of us. He said, no, 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 you are wrong. And it's at this point that I become really quite frightened.
Did you want help, mate? Were you wishing for help?
There was no help was going to come. There was just me. And then we pulled in to the Oval station. And I think, well, he's not going anywhere, and of course the door's open. I scream after him, stop him, stop him. And there are people on the platform who try to intercept him. But it's a blur. The adrenaline and the tension that must have been within that man. He was gone. And then he realised they'd done it again. London's under attack.
Breaking news, we're getting reports of a reported series of incidents on what may be the tube system. We are told Warren Street in the north of London, the Oval, of course, down to the south of London, and Shepherd's Bush out to the west. And we are being told that smoke has been seen out of some of those areas, and certainly those underground stations evacuated
It is a very familiar scene, I have to report here, with dozens upon dozens of police vehicles and fire engines, other emergency services now arriving.
I'm going now, please keep moving.
The Metropolitan Police are turning up with officers and people carriers. At this moment in time, they're as confused as we are.
On the morning of the 21st, I remember being over at the mortuary site, still trying to positively identify some of those who'd lost their life on the 7th of July. One of my colleagues put his head round the door and just said, "Doug, we need to go."
We're just getting reports gunshots may have been heard on...
A nail bomb may have exploded on one of the carriages.
Witnesses talk of seeing a man carrying a rucksack that suddenly explodes.
Suddenly people were starting screaming and shouting and running.
I just had this smell, this terrible smell.
You've got a job to do, but can you start moving back now, please? Thank you very much. Back to the traffic.
And we've been stopped in Oval and asked to leave the train.
People getting up, leaving things behind them, just trying to get to the doors before the train even stopped. And everyone was just waiting for the bomb to go off.
Obviously, there is a great deal of concern. It is exactly 2 weeks today since the first bombings on London, and there is a concern at the moment that this could be a second wave of attacks.
Just getting news that emergency services say they're responding to reports of an incident on a bus in Hackney Road. No injuries, but the windows have been blown out.
We've got mails, backpacks, public transport system. Same scenario as 7/7, but slightly different. The difference is that the devices failed to properly detonate, and you have a number of suspects at large who could do it again. Photographs recovered from the CCTV systems gave images of what the potential suspects looked like. And as the senior investigating officer, my job was to find them. But what is the playbook for a failed suicide bomber who had no plan B because they were intending to kill themselves is then going to go and do next?
Clearly, the intention must have been to kill. And I think the important point is that the intention of the terrorists has not been fulfilled.
Police within the last hour going underground to search for clues. They already have forensic material and they have 4 crime scenes to pore over.
London was very lucky. Very lucky. It could so easily have been a repeat of 7/7. I went to Warren Street. It was very eerie. The tube was parked there with the doors open, and this yellow glutinous mass sitting on the floor with a rucksack and plastic Tupperware container sitting on top of it. All we knew was these devices were made of a material that looked very similar to what we'd seen at the bomb-making factory in Leeds and what had been used on 7/7. But whether they were linked any more closely and would lead back to a common source of manufacture, it was difficult to say. But The biggest clue to identify the bombers was the rucksacks. We needed to get them back to the laboratory straight away.
Detectives are now investigating links with the last bombing and asking questions.
Who were the men who got away? And were their bombs sophisticated devices designed for mass murder or something cruder? And did the same people plan this or another group of terrorists? I arranged a trip to the tribal areas to meet Haji. The new brothers started the explosive training course. But they had a different instructor who was less methodical, and it was a problem. An accidental explosion killed 2 of the men. The surviving brother saw their martyrdom and was deeply affected. Haji persuaded him to return to Britain for operational work and to recruit more brothers.
Across London this morning there was heightened security at all major tube stations. Those who did travel said they were feeling more anxious and more aware of their surroundings. One Asian man said he felt particularly nervous travelling on the Northern Line. Passengers had moved down the carriage after spotting him and a rucksack between his legs.
Carol has texted, yes, the terrorists have won because I'm terrified to travel in central London and I won't be doing so in the near future.
I personally won't use public transport anymore. Londoners are getting scared.
The rucksack that had partially detonated at Shepherd's Bush was searched overnight. In that rucksack was found a gym membership card. The name Hussein Osman was unknown to us at Scotland Yard, but the sports membership card identified an address. So a surveillance operation was mounted at Scotia House in South London. Elevated concern is probably an understatement because you have a pretty grainy, poor CCTV image of your suspect, Hussein Osman, and you have a pretty poor photograph from a sports membership card. And the surveillance team briefing is that this is who we're interested in, and he might be in that block of flats, as well as dozens of other residents. There was a lot of pressure because, you know, what's to stop somebody who is suspected of being involved in the events of the day before, deciding that, you know, having failed yesterday, I'm going to go and try another attack today.
The 22nd of July was David's funeral. When we heard that the bombs hadn't gone off the day before, we were absolutely delighted. We wouldn't want anybody else to experience what we were experiencing at that time. We were just distraught thinking about David, losing him in such a horrible way. I think David's was one of the very first funerals, so the whole area was just full of media. When we came out of church carrying the coffin, I stood at the back because I didn't want the cameras on me, because I was just so not in a good place. The pain of the grief, it was just overwhelming.
Within the past few minutes, Scotland Yard have confirmed that armed officers have shot a man on the Underground just after 10 o'clock this morning. Let's get the latest.
I was sitting on the tube train. It hadn't pulled out of the station. The doors were still open. I heard a lot of shouting, "Get down, get out." I looked to my right. I saw a chap run onto the train, Asian guy. He was running so fast he half tripped. He was being pursued by 3 guys. One had a black handgun in his hand, the left hand. And as he sort of went down, 2 of them sort of dropped onto him to hold him down, and the other one fired. I heard 5 shots.
The 3 men pushed him to the ground and shot him in the head. 3 shots, hit it, bang, bang, bang.
We were on scene almost immediately. The shooting was 10 o'clock and we arrived about 4 minutes past. It was very, very tense. The firearms team basically told me that they'd killed a terrorist, and I had to go down and search the body. Has he got a bomb on him or an explosive device? He was on his knees, leaning onto one of the seats, and his head had been sort of caught between one of the vertical poles that you hang on to. I could see that he didn't have a rucksack or a bag. So I lifted him up and placed him on the floor. He bled all over me and it was horrid. But you need to get evidence. My concern was maybe he had a component of a device which was going to go and be used to make other bombs elsewhere. I could see that there was clearly a lump in one of his pockets. Undid the button and I removed what turned out to be his wallet. I had a quick check to make sure there was no detonators or anything in there, which there wasn't.
You'd found nothing?
Found nothing. As I walked away from it, I still believed he was a suicide bomber. But I couldn't stop thinking about his wallet. It was incredibly neat and tidy. And having seen pictures of the bomb factory in Leeds, and having been involved with cases where I've been to other bomb factories, they often seem to be shitholes. And I was just struck how neat and tidy his wallet was.
We are looking for 4 extremely dangerous men. And it may be that the police have found one of them.
Nobody wants to see anybody shot. But if it's actually a terrorist that was trying to carry out a murderous attack the previous day and they're about to do it again, then frankly there's not going to be a huge degree of soul searching from me personally. If it turned out to be a different set of circumstances, then the emotions change very quickly.
The Metropolitan Police say the man shot dead on the London Underground yesterday was not connected to the hunt for Thursday's bombers. Tonight, Scotland Yard identified him as Jean-Charles de Menezes, a 27-year-old Brazilian. Police said the man's death was a tragedy, but in a statement said he had emerged from a house under surveillance and his behaviour was suspicious.
I knew that somebody had exited Scotia House and got on a bus. And 2 surveillance officers got on the bus with him.
They grew increasingly suspicious as he exited the bus at Brixton Tube Station only to get back on board. As he approached Stockwell, this time on foot, some officers were convinced he was a suicide bomber. Cressida Dick issued an order to stop him. By then it was too late. Armed police confronted him in the tube carriage and shot him 7 times in the head.
No police officer gets up in the morning, goes into work saying, I want to shoot an innocent person today. Nobody. It was a tragic set of events that any right-minded person couldn't describe as anything else other than a catastrophe.
He is the young Brazilian whose death has rocked Britain's biggest police force.
For the man who had to identify his cousin's body, there could be no justification.
He has nothing to hide. He had nothing to hide from anyone.
E mais uma vez eu quero deixar esclarecido, porque há ainda algumas interrogações. Com palavras eu não consigo nem expressar o tamanho erro que a polícia cometeu.
After John Charles was identified, part of what's going through your mind is you still have 4 bombers at large. Where are they? The first major decision was to release the images and ask for the public's help.
These are the men who police say planned the attacks on Thursday that failed to emulate.
All of the men seen on closed-circuit video, 3 in train stations, 1 on a double-decker bus.
They're today Britain's foremost wanted, and they're on the run.
This is the greatest operational challenge ever faced by the Metropolitan Police Service. But officers are facing previously unknown threats and great danger.
The assumption has to be that they are still wanting to die, that they may still have explosives. So these are very dangerous men who are still at large.
I'd appeal to anyone who has information about where these men currently are to immediately call 999 for an emergency urgent police response. The public should not approach them.
During the course of the week, we got a pretty strong and positive response from the public. So our understanding of who we were looking for was improving.
The would-be suicide bomber who targeted the number 26 bus in Hackney Road was named as Mukhtar Saeed Ibrahim, aged 27.
Ibrahim was given his British passport in 2004. He came to Britain from Eritrea in 1992.
And the Warren Street bomber is thought to be 24-year-old Yasin Hassan Omar.
He was an orphan refugee who came to Britain from Somalia at the age of 12.
We had some information from the public that said that the man running out of the Oval was probably a guy called Ramzi Mohammed.
Ramzi Mohammed, a 25-year-old father of 2.
Ramzi hung about with a bloke called Handy, who we knew was a nickname of Hussein Osman.
And Ethiopian-born Hussein Osman tried to trigger his bomb near Shepherd's Bush tube station, but there's no explosion.
We were looking for a significant breakthrough in the case.
The most wanted posters of the 4 are now all over the capital and remain Scotland Yard's best chance of rolling up the cell.
One of my colleagues from the anti-terrorist hotline had received information from a member of the public that one of the potential suspects travelled on a bus in disguise, dressed in a full burqa. The intelligence suggested that it was the Warren Street bomber, Yasin Omar, and he's maybe hiding out in a house in the West Midlands.
We were dealing with failed suicide bombers. It was new territory for the police. We just knew that when we went in, we had to secure him as quick as possible. The subject was an address in Haybarns Road. Once the commander said go, then you start to feel your adrenaline going. We forced the door with a shotgun and entered the premises. Me and my partner went straight to the bedroom, but there was nobody in there. Then I saw the light was on a bathroom off the side of it. The stun grenade was thrown in. The subject was in the bath. He had the mobile phone in his hand. He had a bag on his back. And I did think for a second, this is it. I had my hand on my handgun. For a second, I considered using it. It came like very, very close. But I could see it an opportunity to use the taser. Yeah, I took it. There was one officer who believed in that backpack was a bomb. He took that off the subject's back. Ran out with it under his arms. He didn't know what he had and if it was going to go off. In the end, there was no device. Even to this day, it's one of the bravest things I've ever seen.
I can confirm that Yassin Hassan Omar has been arrested in Birmingham at about 4:30 a.m. this morning.
It was the breakthrough in the case that the police had been looking for and came on the streets of a quiet Birmingham suburb.
I'm just absolutely stunned. I mean, to find out that it might actually be a suicide bomber living 2 minutes away, it's just unbelievable.
There was a sense of satisfaction, but there was a long way to go.
The hunt for one of Britain's most wanted men is over. The search for the other three continues.
We are still adrift Hussein Osman. We are still searching for the ringleader, Muqtasad Ibrahim, as well as Ramzi Mohammed, the man who fled the Oval.
When I saw the news, I thought, that's him. Ramzi Mohammed. There are regrets, yeah. I always think if I'd have actually got hold of him and managed to restrain him, history might have been changed.
Almost every hour, a new development. Police searching the block of flats where one of the suspected bombers lived have found a large amount of bomb-making materials in a lock-up garage in this underground car park. Yassin Hussain Omar was the official tenant holder. He'd been on benefits and income support until recently, and it's thought Mukhtar Saeed Ibrahim was his flatmate.
This is where Ibrahim went to school. Some classmates describe him as a rowdy troublemaker who was easily led. In 1996, Ibrahim was sentenced to 5 years at Wood Green Crown Court for a violent mugging. It was while he was serving his sentence at Hunter Combe Young Offenders Institute that Ibrahim began taking an interest in Islam.
As the investigation moved at breakneck speed, we were discovering more and more about them.
Mukhtar Saeed Ibrahim, the acknowledged leader of the group, filmed here picking up one installment of the 440 litres of liquid hydrogen peroxide they bought from hair product shops in London.
Means of communication between the group were being identified and tracked. It was clear that they had all attended Finsbury Park Mosque.
It's thought the bombers were influenced by the preacher of hate Abu Hamza. Osman, the Shepherd's Bush bomber, was filmed in the crowd outside Finsbury Park Mosque in 2003.
Their profiles will have been of interest, but the priority at the time is locate them and safely detain them.
Our top story, the anti-terror police are involved in a major security operation in West London.
It's not exactly clear what it is, but we've now heard 4 shots coming from the direction of the flats over there. The police are moving everybody out in a hurry. They don't want people here. They're worried about people being in line of sight of whatever is happening just around the corner.
What went on was madness. It literally was madness. There's helicopters up and there's people running around, people screaming, dogs barking. Residents were fleeing for their lives. The intelligence picture, there was just one terrorist in that building. People said, right, we want to go into the building. I said, no, we'll just wait a bit. I wasn't sure whether they were going to blow themselves up and, you know, potentially taking a couple of us with them. That's when the shouting starts. We didn't know how long it was going to go on for, whether it was going to be a siege or whether it was going to be over fairly quickly. We didn't want them to come out wearing a bomb vest or something, because then they probably were going to get shot. If they come out wearing nothing but underwear, then they haven't got anything that's concealed on them. That lowers the threat level considerably. That's when we use gas to try and get them out.
Hands aloft. The man on the left has been named as Ibrahim Mukhtar Saeed. The other man is Ramzi Mohammed.
I remember seeing 2 on the landing, hands up. We only thought there was 1 in there and there were 2 in there. You know, we got a little bit lucky.
The failure of the second operation was down to poor training and poor communication. After returning to the UK, Brother Mukhtar called just once to let us know he was safe, but then we lost contact. Before 7/7, the brothers had a problem getting the peroxide explosive to the correct concentration. Sadiq called me, and I passed on technical guidance, so they got the bomb mixture right. This action was crucial, and I regret I could not contact Brother Mukhtar. If only I'd been able to give him the same technical fix, the 21/7 attacks would have been a success.
an image of Britain's most wanted. Dressed in a protective white forensic suit and escorted by police, one of the suspected suicide bombers of July the 21st is taken away. And it's emerged that Italian police have arrested Hussein Osman in Rome. He's wanted in connection with the tube attack at Shepherd's Bush.
In the space of 8 days, to identify a group of unknown potential suicide bombers and have them all safely detained is a testament to the work of many, many people. There's nothing I personally could have done different, but I certainly wish the events of the morning of the 22nd of July didn't happen. Consequences of it were tragic for Jean-Charles Demarais and everybody else that knew him, and they weren't that good for the police.
Not one of the witnesses said they heard the words armed police.
No, shoot to kill!
The jury have clearly said that the police lied, that Jean was completely innocent, and that from the moment Jean entered Stockwell tube station, he was doomed to be shot dead without warning.
Ralph came close to masterminding more deadly attacks, including a liquid explosives plot to bring down multiple passenger jets flying to the United States. Ralph was killed in a drone strike, and Al-Qaeda lost perhaps one of its best handlers.
When you look back on 7/7, you think you're going to be viewing it from the outside. But as soon as you start thinking about what happened, you're suddenly there again. And it feels very real. You feel the tension, you can hear the noise. It's almost like you can touch the image you see in your head. And sometimes you can see it and you can be calm and dispassionate, but other times you're caught in a raw emotion. I first went back to work a couple of weeks after 7/7, and it gave me some sort of structure, but people could see I wasn't right. Colleagues said I had a haunted look about me, and that's when the hallucinations became very intrusive. I couldn't look in the sky and see a plane without seeing it explode. I couldn't sit next to a window without seeing that explode. Or I'd walk into a bar and I'd see explosion. Sometimes I was injured, sometimes I was the only one who was standing there amongst injured and dead people. It was just so graphic. Things built up and culminated in one very difficult night, at which point I knew I needed more professional help. And I ended up in the Priory. I was a day patient twice a week, and on the second day I walked into a room where I was the only civvy and the rest were military, Afghan and Iraqi vets. And I remember immediately I walked in the room, they demanded to know which regiment I was from, and I had to explain that I wasn't. And I explained what happened, and they were saying, well, that's understandable, you got ill, we shouldn't be ill, we shouldn't be here, because we were expecting war. And I tried to explain in my limited knowledge that the primitive part of the mind doesn't work like that. No one is supposed to see that kind of destruction.
I still can't believe I was involved in a terrorist attack. And now I cannot believe it's 20 years. 20 years is a very long time. But I fear also that people have moved on. Sometimes it's like they've all forgotten about it. But for me, it's real every day because I have challenges. I was given a prosthetic limb, and it's been very hard. We were never offered family counseling. There was no psychological support. We had to complain for that. You know, you have to fight for everything.
Thelma Stobar suffered life-changing injuries on the 7th of July 2005. Since then, she's dedicated her life to working with survivors of terrorism and campaigning for support in victims' law.
My mother said to me, God had a purpose for your life. Use that second life to do whatever you can. By looking after us in the immediate, medium and long term, we hope that a message is sent to terrorists that the societal and community values that they fight against, like human rights and democracy, grow stronger under attack. Now I advocate for victims of terrorism. The reality is, in time, we come to terms with what happened to us. We continuously navigate our challenges encountered along the way. Try as we may, we cannot move on from the life-changing injury suffered or forget the changes to our lives that we never imagined.
One of our regrets is that we're not a family that have taken photographs. It's not just something we've ever done. So we have very, very few photographs of David growing up. And this video clip is the only recording we have of him.
Nice to meet you, David Folks. Okay, so you come into the position for internal sales coordinator.
David was studying for his management qualifications, and as part of the course, they had to do some role-playing.
Can you give me an example of last time something went wrong in your place of work and how you overcame that problem?
This was taken just a few months before July the 7th.
I suppose, obviously, sometimes holidays go wrong and customers get annoyed. And it's to be honest,
more often than not.
More often than not,
let's be honest.
It does quite often.
Once we'd had the funeral, I remember thinking, we do need to try and get back to some kind of semblance of normality. But we weren't normal.
There's actually quite a lot of...
Our world is not ordinary anymore.
Where would you see yourself in 2 years within my organisation?
Well, as I said, not being based at the organisation, I can possibly see...
We just accept that we live in a parallel world now. Because the world we live in is different to the world everybody else lives in.
I've covered everything you need to know. Okay, well, thank you for coming. And I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
What are we looking here for? So we're looking for my 7/7 papers, which I've stored carefully away. That was a card from one of my therapists after I'd finished treatment with her. That was the next day's headline in the Express. The supposedly independent Intelligence and Security Committee published a report. As survivors, we were allowed, I think it was an hour with the report before it was released to the public, which was not very much time to go through all the details.
Today's report contains significant new details about the information held on Mohammed Sadiq Khan before the London bombings. He was on the radar for 4 years. The missed opportunities begin in 2001. This surveillance picture of Sadiq Khan at an adventure weekend in the UK with 39 others was released today. West Yorkshire Special Branch had them under surveillance as part of Operation Warlock. Officers later identified 9 men by name, but they say they did not get Sadiq Khan's name.
This footage was taken 3 years later as he met with a group plotting to blow up a Kent shopping centre. But Sadiq Khan and fellow 7/7 bomber Shehzad Tanweer were dismissed by MI5 as low priority. Now an official report says the security services shouldn't be blamed for that decision.
Are you happy with this report?
Not at all. They've not actually addressed the basic question. Could more have been done?
Almost 4 years on, the government continues to resist calls for a full-scale inquiry.
The complete refusal to have a public inquiry begs the question of what on earth is going on. I'm still cross today because if all the pieces of the jigsaw had been put together, it would have been blindingly obvious that this was a major player. And I say there was an opportunity that would have prevented 7/7 and it was missed.
Those choices that we made then, I think we would make them again today. That's not because we wouldn't have liked to have done something different, but because higher priorities, finite resources, and other big plots to destroy life were preoccupying us.
Some of the families, I think, do feel that not everything has emerged. Are you worried that something might come out?
I would imagine if I hadn't been an intelligence officer, I might have felt the same as them. The horror that they have lived through, the loss of their loved ones, their wishing to feel that they knew everything that was available. However, if everything is made public, exactly how you did everything, you're not just telling those bereaved and distressed families, you're telling next week's terrorist.
What's it like looking at Mohammed Sadiq Khan? I don't feel any emotion to the bombers. Whilst Khan was a bit older, Tanweer was just a young man. They feel powerless in our society, and suddenly they're given this ideology that makes them feel powerful men. But nothing could be further from the truth. They were just cowards, but they were puppets. They were manipulated, sold on this idea of, well, you will be dead, but you will be a martyr because you've done this amazing warrior-like action. But they're not warriors. They killed innocent people. They weren't fighting, they weren't brave. They just enacted a surprise attack on civilians. That's not a warrior.
Did any feelings of revenge come to you?
No. No, I can't in any way imagine possibly being vengeful and wanting revenge, no.
No, I think the yellow ones, don't you? Yeah.
David would want, come on, Dad, see what you can do to stop this happening to anybody else. Not, come on, Dad, go and get revenge for me being killed. Not at all. Not in his nature, it's not in my nature.
The bombers, they wanted to divide us, but London, we're very strong. The terrorists will never, never win.
Hatred and anger have no place in our society. Whatever people's ethos, religion, or view, we should always be tolerant and accommodating and accepting. We owe that much to those who aren't here and those that are still suffering.
Hear me whisper softly in my ear. I talk a lot about the future, talk about the happiness of two of us. I give you a kiss of love, the moon shines on the water, imprinting the image of the two of us. Our spaces held only us, the night seems like 1,000 colorful flowers, floating like a seagull's wings. Wrap your arms around each other on the passionately in love. Two big hearts together, next into the rhythm of music and poetry. Space Sao ở dưới này nóng nó có một tấm tấm. Em bật qua tấm tấm lên đây. Bố lạnh hay không?
Hả?
Bố lạnh à?
Bố không.
Em thấy nóng. Bố không nóng. Bố không nóng, em nóng. Bố đi xuống đây. Coi bố. Bố lên coi tiếp rồi. Coi. Đưa bố lên với khuôn mặt của em bây giờ rồi. Phải đi tìm ấy. Bố này có mấy? Bố mấy?
Là cái gì còn đấy?
Bố này không gặp em.
Không biết, không gặp nào.
Không gặp nào. Ôi, chúng em đang chơi tay ở trong đây. Sau nó hút tháo được ra. Em có mua quái cho bố biết. Nhưng bố không được xem. Bố kéo cái dây này ra là bố thấy nó hoạt động bằng bóng tròn, nó bố xem đi, bố giật cái tay em ra, bố giật đi. Đấy, nó đã có cái đấy, bố cũng biết. Bây giờ nghe em trình mời vào cái robot trong nhà, nó nhỏ nhặt gì nè, ra đi. Bố xem nó không? Bố xem này. Bố xem ra kia. Bố xem kẹp đã nè. Bố đang gừa nha. Xong rồi. Chuẩn bị. Bố nhìn bố. Bố nhìn này.